You're listening to Autumn on the Air, the weekly podcast that brings you conversations about the impact of research commercialization and the people who make it happen. Join us for interviews with patent and licensing professionals, innovators, entrepreneurs, and tech transfer leaders on the issues and trends that matter most. Keep listening for an inside track on the people, IP policies, and politics changing our world.
Welcome to Autumn on the Air. Today, I'm thrilled to have with us Levi C. Maaia, the director, and Noah Mark, co-producer and filmmaker of the documentary Pathways to Invention. Produced by Maaia Mark Productions in association with the Lemelson-MIT Program with funding from the Lemelson Foundation, MIT School of Engineering, and the University of California at Berkeley, this 60-minute documentary delves into the age-old question of whether inventors are born or made. Through up-close profiles, it explores the impactful contributions of inventors across various disciplines, including biotech, medical diagnostics and prosthetics, sustainable agriculture, food production, software development, and materials science. Notably, all featured inventors are recipient of the prestigious Lemelson-MIT Student Prize. In this film, Levi and Noah explore the journeys of inventors across various fields, shedding light on the pathways to creativity, resilience, and success. Welcome, Levi and Noah. So excited to have you here on the air.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to be talking about Pathways to Invention with the two of you today, which I had a chance to watch on PBS, and it's a really, really great documentary. And to get things started, I wanted to ask you, your documentary delves into the journeys of inventors across a variety of different fields. So what inspired you to explore this topic?
So it was a long journey that led us to explore this topic. It started with both Levi and myself just being curious about the ability that people have, that everyone has really, to shape the world around them. And Levi came to me first with the idea of following the maker movement in Cuba. The maker movement is something that Levi's been passionate about for a very long time. And the way that it has evolved in Cuba is unique to most places in the world because of the embargo and the economic situation in Cuba. The people in Cuba just don't have access to sort of everyday items that most of the countries in the world can just go purchase at a store. So to get through the day, you've got all these very inventive, innovative Cubans that are tinkerers, makers, inventors, creating things to get through the day. And so that's where this idea came from originally. Long story short, Levi and I ended up going to Cuba, filming with a bunch of makers there, but that was in January of 2020. And when we got back, the pandemic just shut down the world entirely. And during that time, during the pandemic, it was obvious that Levi and I were not going to be able to get back to Cuba anytime soon to complete the film. So we pivoted the idea to being specific to makers in Cuba, to being one that we could produce here in America. And that's what led us to Pathways to Invention and to all of the different inventors that we profile in the film. So the original idea stayed the same, which is profiling innovative people who are taking matters into their own hands, solving problems that are right in front of their face, making the world a better place for everyone. But it changed from the lens of doing that in Cuba, which is sort of a very focused lens because of the economic situation there, to a much broader lens, which in a lot of ways was really cool because it allowed us to profile inventors from coast to coast in America that were from very diverse backgrounds, very diverse group of inventors, and solving a very diverse set of problems. So we absolutely loved getting to know all the inventors and getting to share their stories.
And I'm really curious, you profiled 12 different inventors, like you said, from all across the country, a variety of different fields, from, piglet crushing to cervical cancer screening to, putting programs in plants. How did you find all these individuals?
We worked with the Lemelson-MIT Program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge. And all of the individuals in the film, at some point in their careers, were recipients of the Lemelson-MIT Student Prize. And all of the inventors in the film, I think when we shot it, were all under 40 years old. And so they were at some point in early to mid-career. And some of the inventors were still working on the project for which they received the recognition for, and others had iterated, reached a hurdle with that particular project. One of the invention teams actually found that by the time they developed out of the lab and were ready to bring it out of the lab, that the invention was already being produced by another company with by which they didn't feel that they could compete with. Yeah, they didn't feel they could compete with that company. So they decided to pivot, and they came up with something probably more revolutionary in that pivot. And that was the mouth mouse, which allows, I think they call it the mouth pad, which allows someone with physical immobility issues to use their tongue to control a computer, which, was fascinating and grew out of what they were trying to create was a autonomously controlled wheelchair, so that someone wouldn't bump into corners, and if you had low vision, that you could navigate a space with, much like a car does with the backup sensors and whatnot, these ultrasonic sensors. And because by the time they got to ready to bring that to market, there was already a competing product, they were able to pivot and come up with something I think that's going to have an even greater impact.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And, one of the things that comes through watching the documentary is, sometimes innovation seems like a magical process from the outside. I think one of the inventors even talked about, you look up inventor in the dictionary and you think it's Thomas Edison, and you're making something that is extremely, life-changing. What are some of the common traits or experiences you found among the inventors that you guys profiled?
Perseverance, for sure. I think one of our goals with the film was to demystify the term inventor. The term inventor, we learned while making this film, makes a lot of people uncomfortable because of all the things that you just mentioned. Like there's some sort of magical moment that happens, but in real life, it doesn't seem to be the case that it plays out that way. For example, there isn't usually just like a single inventor working in a lab that has this like eureka moment and goes from nothing to something in an instant. It's usually a team effort. It's probably safe to say it's always a team effort on some level. And it usually also involves many, many attempts that end in failure that eventually will lead to a discovery or an innovation or an invention, as long as the inventor embraces those failures and learns from them. So that common theme of perseverance is universal, because there isn't a single person in the film who on their first attempt to create their invention had success. The story of invention is really a story of overcoming failures and learning from those failures and embracing them and not getting discouraged by them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the film also highlights the importance of invention, education, and nurturing young minds. And you mentioned that most of the 12 individuals that you profiled, the 12 inventors, were all under the age of 40. What are some of the specific elements that you believe make a curriculum effective in fostering innovation?
We actually asked all of our inventors that as part of the film. I don't know how many of those answers ended up in the film itself, but that's a real debate among educators. Is it nature? Is it nurture? What do you do to nurture it? Providing opportunities for people. I don't know, Noah. What do you think?
Well, that's sort of our universal question in the film, right? Like, are inventors born or are they made? And the answer that we came to in making the film is that it is both. That you have to have that spark inside of yourself. You have to be a self-starter on some level. You have to be the type of person that sees a problem and wants to design a solution for it. But it can't just be you on your own. Like, you can't just be born and then you're just a person alone that does something magical. You have to have the desire to do it, but then you have to have an environment that is supportive of it.
And the resources, right?
And the resources. Yeah. So I think in terms of curriculum, it's twofold. It's one, it's getting people to understand that whatever it is they want to solve, they can solve it, and not feeling discouraged and not feeling like, that's someone else's responsibility to solve that. I can't do that, but someone else can do it. No, you can do it. No matter who you are, you can do it. So that's one part of it. But then the other part of it is the resources. Making sure that that person not only has the belief in their own ability to do it, but the laboratory, the tools, whatever it is that they might need to implement their thoughts and ideas and designs.
When I was a high school teacher several years back, I taught high school for about 7 years. And one of the things that I was part of my graduate research, as well as what I did in my classroom, was looking at how the maker movement with a capital M, which they've got maker fairs all across the country. Yeah, people taking, electronics projects, other crafts projects, bringing them together, trying to either create art, create solutions, just do something that isn't store-bought, whether it's for pleasure or to actually solve a real challenge in their life. Take that ethos, bring it into the classroom, and have students identify a challenge in their own life so that they can say, I want to solve that. And it doesn't have to be cancer screening. It can be, I don't want to hold the bottle for my sister while the baby needs to be fed. I don't want to feed the dog every day at 6:00 because I'm at Little League practice. So you create a bottle holder or an automatic dog food dispenser or something like that in a classroom, and the students suddenly have agency over this. They feel like I not only did I build this, but I identified the need and then I found ways to create it. I did that with students and I watched a magical moment happen. And it happens, some people call it the IKEA effect also, because if you're committed to building this furniture, let's say from IKEA, when it's all done, you're going to be proud of it and you're going to value it more than if you had just purchased something pre-built and stuck it in the corner. So even though these solutions that we build in a classroom may not be commercially viable products, what they've done is put the student in the mindset of being a creator, being someone who can make a solution to a problem. And that's powerful. So we're not teaching kids how to make dog food dispensers or baby bottle holders. We're teaching them how to solve problems and imagine themselves as inventors.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that your documentary really showcases is inventors who overcome significant challenges to bring their ideas to life. Can you pick maybe one or two stories in your film that particularly resonated with you?
What's your favorite story, Noah?
Oh man, it's hard to have a favorite. I know genuinely
there are a lot of really good ones in there. Yeah.
I think a really important one, particularly for people who aren't living in a place where pork production happens, is to see what happens in a pig farm. And to hear Matt and Abe talk about piglet crushing as the number one challenge that they face as pork producers with loss of their livestock. 40% is the number I heard from them. Can be as high as 40% loss of piglets from crushing by their mothers. So their solution of creating an anti-piglet crushing device, basically an alarm, a wearable alarm for a mother pig to wear and be alerted to when she's laying on one of the piglets, and gives her a little electrical impulse enough to let the piglet out. And it can be done autonomously in a large facility where there's multiple piglets screaming for food, for fun, they're making all kinds of noise, and their device uses artificial intelligence to identify a piglet in distress, and then the corresponding mother that they need to give the impulse to save the piglet's life. And that invention, I think, is important for people who aren't involved in agriculture and particularly pork production to see, because it's just not something we would even think of. So exposing the audience to these concepts and these ideas and these challenges that don't even cross their mind, living outside of an area like Iowa where there's more pigs than people.
Yeah, that was a particularly fascinating story. I had no idea that was even an issue. And never crossed my mind when it comes to pork farming.
Yeah. And they've since, to talk about iterative process and how one invention can lead to another, is they've taken that product and they've integrated it into a whole pig healthcare system. So now the nursery is essentially run by this software similar to what you'd find in a hospital for patient care. They're using it to track piglet health from birth to the time that they send them to market.
Oh, wow. I would imagine that probably has applications for other type of animal breeding and growing and production as well, I would think, beyond pigs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Noah, did you have a favorite one, or are you sticking with the pig crushing?
I really can't say I had a favorite one. What I love about it is that it shows the diversity, the range of problems that people are out there tackling, from piglet crushing to cervical cancer screening, to blue dye disinfectant, all of the things that are issues in our world are all interconnected, and people are approaching individual problems that they're solving. But what I love about the stories we shared, and the reason I don't think I can pick a favorite one, is that they just show that no matter what it is that you're looking at in the world, like, there's room for improvement in it, and that there are people out there that are making that improvement happen.
Yeah, and we tried to pick stories that were diverse, both in the inventor's profile as well as the geography of where they existed in. So we have stories from Africa, we have stories from the United States, we have stories from agriculture, we have stories from biotech and software. So I think that's another thing, is that people tend to think of all inventions as being high tech, software, hardware related, and in many cases, many of the inventions in our program are not. They are things that maybe involve some amount of technology, but then are also have a very specific application that's in a diverse area that many of our audience members, I suspect, aren't familiar with. So that was important to us, to have something that would resonate differently with different people depending on their own background.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the documentary so fascinating, is because there is such a breadth and depth to the inventors and the problems that they're tackling, that there's something there, like you said, for everybody to be able to appreciate and, maybe even learn from, hopefully. And I think, another recurring theme I saw in the documentary was collaboration and mentorship was very important in the past of all these 12 inventors. How do you think fostering a supportive network contributes to innovation?
I think it directly contributes to innovation. It's not just fostering that network. It's sometimes creating that network from scratch, right? You asked if I have a favorite invention, which I really can't say that I do. But one of my favorite stories in the film about how an invention came to be is Paige's story about Taka Taka Plastics. And the way that she came to do that, partnering with her friend Peter in Gulu, and it's just this sort of circuitous, unlikely series of events that leads to them figuring out a way to recycle plastics on a scale that makes sense to do there, right? Like, recycling plastic isn't a new invention. Like, we've known how to do that for a long time. But she talks about how if you're not doing it on a massive industrial scale, it sort of didn't make sense until they figured out how to do it for Taka Taka Plastics. So that partnership grew into something that now she can foster, and it can grow, and they can recycle more plastics. But at the beginning, it was just sort of like a notion about, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out how to recycle plastics on a smaller scale? And she didn't have any of the connections to do that. And just having that idea of I would like to figure out how to do this, then led to those partnerships that then led to a small scale invention that then became something she could foster and grow.
And one of the important parts of her story also is that they, initially reached out to people who were supposed experts in this field, and they were all told, no, you can't do this. You can't do it on this scale. It has to be done on a massive scale, tri-state area size recycling plant. You'll never be able to do it in a neighborhood, in a developing nation, no less. So the resilience that she showed in she attempted to build the network by bringing people in who she thought knew more than she did about it, and ultimately found out that if to solve this problem, she was going to need to develop the solution herself. And in doing so, they brought in street connected youth. They were able to build a program that wasn't just simply the technology of recycling plastic, but building a community that was willing to do it, offering employment to people in a community where there wasn't necessarily a lot of opportunity. And now they're collecting all of this waste that's laying all over the countryside and turning it into construction materials, recycled construction materials from plastic.
Yeah, that was really a fascinating story. The amount of plastic in Ghana was just incredible. And the fact that they've now been able to recycle it and use it for useful purposes. It was a great, great story. And I think another really great story that resonated with me was the inventor Nicole Black, who found inspiration from her own experience with hearing loss. How do you think personal experiences shape an inventor's journey?
I think personal experiences have a profound impact on an inventor's journey. And those can be both sort of direct, like you're talking about with Nicole Black, where, she personally had an issue and then wanted to figure out a way to solve that. But then they can also be more big picture, just in terms of what we were speaking about earlier with overcoming obstacles and failure, and creating the drive that's necessary within an inventor. It's all tied together too, because like that story we were just talking about with Paige and Taka Taka Plastics, when she was talking to these experts in the field of recycling, and they were telling her you can't do this. They weren't necessarily wrong if you're looking within their world of like what their expertise is, like the way they do it. You can't do it the way she wanted to do it. So she had to figure out a different way to do it than what the prevailing knowledge was. So I think there's a good lesson in all of these stories about just not giving up on what it is you want to see happen in the world. And so because of that, your personal experiences can play a major role in both your practical application of what you're trying to do as an inventor, and both your sort of philosophical view of, should I even try to do this? Because I'm being told it can't be done. And maybe it can't be done the way that people have done it before, but maybe I care about this enough to try to figure out a new way to do it that's never even been attempted.
Now, in the film, you explore how technology's made invention more accessible than ever. How do you see emerging technologies further changing or shaping the landscape of innovation as we move forward in the future?
Oh, that's a big question with emerging AI technology.
I know, right? AI it's changing daily. It's really
I feel like no one knows what to make of AI at the moment. People love it, people hate it, they're terrified of it, they're excited about it. Like it's so many possibilities.
When we made the film, AI was sort of still on the horizon. It wasn't something people were considering in the way that they're considering it. However, two inventors come to mind that were using machine learning, we'll call it, at the time, and that's Josh Siegel and his Carno platform, which wasn't fully explained, I think, in the 1-hour version that's on PBS, but there is some additional background and insight at pathwaystoinvention.org with some deleted scenes. So he explains it better in some of the clips that are on the website. But essentially what he was trying to do was develop a technology like an app-based platform that you'd be able to hold up to maybe your car, but eventually even other devices and appliances around your house, and using the noise that they make, just like a good mechanic can diagnose, bad points by putting a stethoscope on the engine or something. He was thinking that we could train machine learning to listen for sounds and diagnose problems with mechanical appliances or cars or something like that. So they were already thinking about that. And again, as I mentioned with the piglet crushing, they're using machine learning to interpret the language, if you will, of the pigs, and trying to figure out when is a pig in distress versus when is a pig just making noise because it's playing with its siblings or it's hungry. And so trying to match those patterns is something that artificial intelligence has become even better at, and they can leverage it. But I think obviously the future of invention is going to rely heavily on what kind of innovations we can create with artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Now, the film spans a variety of different industries and geographies, as we've been talking about. So were there any surprising insights or patterns that you discovered while filming?
I don't know if there was any real, I think we were just surprised at how much perseverance was required to bring something to fruition. And it was reassuring as we were struggling with our own issues delivering the film. We're trying to put this project together. We're trying to find distribution for it. We're going through the film festival process. And as we're charting that course for ourselves and coming up against certain challenges, we're hearing our own film subjects tell us to be resilient, persevere through your own challenges. And so it was, it wasn't entirely unexpected, but I think it was unexpected the impact that the film's content had on its makers, us, in the process of trying to persevere through an entrepreneurial process of taking an independent film from inception through distribution on public television.
Yeah, I think the parallels between the invention process and the filmmaking process were very interesting. Yeah, because it almost is an identical process from the onset of like having a concept to then going through all the stages to realize that concept and bring it into fruition and have it be a tangible real world thing that people can then experience. If it's a film, they can go watch it. If it's an invention, they can use it. And so we thought at the onset that there would probably be some similarities, but it was surprising to me how much there were not only similarities, but it really was identical. Like it was like an identical pathway from like having that spark of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like I could do this XYZ, and then collaborating and trying to put it together. And, we go down to Cuba and then that can't happen. And, you're failing and you're failing and you're failing, but you keep failing forward. And you don't give up on that original goal. And then at the end, you can figure out a way to make it happen.
And Noah, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the parallels between the Inventors and also your work on sports documentary and unscripted sports content, because many of the crew work also in unscripted sports content.
Oh, wow.
And we were, you might think, well, what does an athlete's journey have to do with an inventor's journey or someone in science and technology? They seem like very different fields. They're almost never combined. And yet, there were many parallels, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I produce a show called The Ultimate Fighter, which is about aspiring MMA fighters. They're all professional fighters. They're trying to get into the UFC. And so our director of photography and a bunch of our crew members, we brought over from that series, from The Ultimate Fighter.
And very different scenario for them.
Very, very different scenario for them. But we were, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but we thought it was really interesting that the skill set for the camera department in covering professional fighters and covering inventors was almost the same skill set in terms of like capturing their story and again just individual human perseverance and mastering a very difficult and complicated and complex series of skills, whether that's in a gym where you're training or whether that's in a lab where you're studying and innovating.
I could really see that because I was taking notes while I was watching the film, and I wrote down here power of perseverance. And that applies whether you're talking about an inventor, an innovator, or you're talking about an athlete who's training hard for MMA, WNBA, the Olympics, whatever it might be. So I can see now that you're explaining it that way, where the parallels would come in.
And I think we're also doing a disservice in many ways to young people by teaching them that failure is not an option. I mean, it's not an option if you've got 3 guys in a can going to the moon, but it is an option if you're learning. It should always be an option when you're learning that you will fail. You should expect to fail when you do things that are challenging. And it doesn't mean that you can't try again. We hear that maybe with little kids when we're teaching them to walk. We expect them to fall down. But suddenly, once you're up and walking, we expect you to do everything perfectly after that. And it's just not realistic.
No, definitely not. And that was actually another phrase that I wrote down. One of the inventors said, you have to be open to failing and confident to learn. And to exactly the point that you were making. I think another thing that was really interesting during the film was that many of the inventors face skepticism or naysayers along their journey, which isn't uncommon for inventors and innovators. How did all these different inventors navigate these obstacles, and what lessons do you think aspiring inventors can take from their experiences?
I think they all navigated the obstacles differently. They're all different people with different personalities. The one common thing that they had is that they kept moving forward. They didn't let the obstacles stop them. But I think everyone responds to adversity differently. And I think that the biggest lesson for young people who hope to one day become an inventor, or anyone of any age who's an aspiring inventor, is that not only will you likely fail, you inevitably will fail. And so just be prepared for that. And it's, you never want to tell someone how to feel, right? So it's like, yes, it's going to be upsetting when you fail. And that's okay. And you will be upset by that, and deal with that, as you will. Maybe you need to take a day or two or a week and just step away from whatever you're trying to do. But don't give up on it. Like, get back to it. And don't even view it necessarily as like a bad thing that you failed. It's just part of the process, part of the learning process. And it's disappointing because obviously everyone would love to just set off to do something and then just succeed right away. But that just doesn't seem to be how anything in life works, unfortunately.
No, I'm afraid not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So another thing I think the film does is it touches on the intersection of invention and societal impact. And we've talked about some of that already. How do you see innovation driving positive change in society?
We have so many challenges as a society. And many of the inventions that we've created in the past are driving negative societal changes for the future. And the way that we're going to address those is through further innovation, right? We need more efficient ways to produce energy, to store energy, to move energy. We need, more efficient ways to deal with disease. You look back and think about all the things we didn't know as recently as our parents' and grandparents' lives and where we've come from there. And someone, the famous quote about invention, everything that's going to be invented, I think it was a patent officer, it said, everything that could be invented has been invented. I don't think I need this job. I mean, we know now more than ever that was a misstatement. And we need young people now more than ever to not feel despondent about the future. I think one of the challenges we face with a lot of the dialogue around the environmental challenges and climate change is that it can feel that it's too overwhelming to even address. We're past the breaking point. There's nothing to do but sit back and literally watch the world burn. And for the more people who don't feel that way, who feel that they can tackle these challenges and that there is a possibility to innovate and create and to solve these issues, those are going to be the people that we rely on for the future.
So finally, I wanted to ask the two of you, what do you hope audiences, particularly those in the tech transfer community, take away from Pathways to Invention?
I think our hope for the takeaway is what Levi was just talking about, is that there really is no problem that's too overwhelming for anyone to try to attempt to solve. And that if you look at all the issues that we're facing as a human race right now, climate change being one of the ones that I think is on the forefront of everyone's mind, innovation is going to be extraordinarily necessary for us to deal with this. And it's not like there'll just be one innovative thing that a team of scientists come up with, and that's going to solve everything. Like it's truly going to be a global effort, all hands on deck, with people just coming up with as many solutions as possible. So I think that's our hope with the film, is that people see the film and it really strikes them that they can be the one to solve whatever problem it is that they're facing, that they're concerned about, no matter how big or how small.
Or even really whatever their passion is. If they want to be a mixed martial arts athlete, that they can do that. And that these are the tools that successful people say they've needed in order to be successful.
Now, if you guys wouldn't mind, before I let you go, can you share with our listeners where they can find the film? I know I found it on PBS, and there's also some added content and additional stories. So can you share that with us as well?
Sure. Yeah. Pathwaystoinvention.org has local TV listings as well as links to streaming in the PBS app and on pbs.org. There's also, as you mentioned, additional deleted scenes, additional footage that's available there from each of the inventors, and some resources for people of all ages to put on their inventor's cap and try to envision what problems they might take on.
That's fantastic. Now, I have to ask you guys, too, you did such a great job with this film. Are you working on anything to follow up on this, or what's next for the two of you?
We are, yes. We're working on a series that has the same goal, the same mission statement that Pathways to Invention has, which is to connect with viewers and get them to have that moment of realization that they can be an inventor. So the series is called The Innovators. And Pathways to Invention focused, specifically on scientists and many different disciplines of science. The Innovators will also feature scientists, but it will feature people that are inventing things that are innovative people outside of technical sciences. So that's makers, tinkerers,
social innovations, things like that.
Social innovation, exactly. Yeah. So we want to have a really big umbrella of the types of people that you see featured on The Innovators. So it has the same core thought that Pathways to Invention had as a film, but our idea with The Innovators as a series is to really be able to grow a community of hopeful, optimistic people that are looking to make the world a better place, and give them a way to connect with one another. And doing it as a series will allow for that, because it'll be something sustainable year after year.
That's amazing. When can we look forward to the series being available for all of us?
Hopefully it would be available next year. It took us a couple of years to get Pathways to Invention on the air, but we've sort of built out a lot of the framework already now, in terms of, our partners with American Public Television and PBS. So we're sort of well ahead of where we were in this phase with the film, in terms of being able to get it on the air, to get it streaming, and to get it in front of viewers. So that's the goal, is that by some point next year, you'll be able to see The Innovators.
That's fantastic. And congratulations to you both on Pathways to Invention. It's really a great film, and I hope all our listeners will take the time to view it. It's really wonderful. And thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Lisa.
Yeah, really appreciate it. This has been great.
And that wraps up another episode of Autumn on the Air. A huge thank you to Levi and Noah for joining us today and sharing insights from Pathways to Invention. To watch more about the inventors and their inspiring stories in this documentary, you can stream Pathways to Invention on PBS. For more details, visit pathwaystoinvention.org. And to learn more about how you can support Levi and Noah's next project, The Innovators, exploring the impact of ingenuity, please reach out to Levi at lcm@Maaia Mark, and that's lcm@MAAIA-mark.com.
Thanks for listening to Autumn on the Air with Lisa Mueller. Get social with us and share your thoughts. You can tweet us at AUTM or visit us online at autm.net. We'll be back next week on the air. Be sure to join us.